Hello everyone, nice to meet you. I'm glad to be here. It's an amazing opportunity to talk about Java technologies and things like that. Today, I will cover three goals to achieve the Java persistence mastery. I know our application nowadays are talking around stateless applications like microservice, but how to do that? The answer is exploring the persistence in the database combined with our Java application. And today, let's go deep on those three steps or three goals. The first one that we cover today is the business. The business is the reason that we are writing code, and so for some reason we forget about that. Sometimes what we do is a LinkedIn-driven design development where we put more emphasis inside the technology to make our resume looks pretty good, and we forget the reason that we're doing any kind of thing. When I do have this kind of discussions, I usually go one step back and discuss the definition of software engineering. I know there are a lot of software engineering definition. My favorite one belongs to this book, The Modern Software Engineering, that has this amazing definition that is software engineering is the application of empirical scientific approach to find efficient economic solution to practical problems in software. And what does that mean? When I do software, I have a reason to do something that makes sense to the business. So it's economic solution. So it needs to make sense inside my budget. It's a mix between science and empirical. So the experience matters. We learn from our mistakes. And, and the goal to achieve is, of course, the reason, the business. Based on that, we usually need to focus on that thing. Not usually, but mostly of the time, with rare exception. And when you do that, we mostly talk around DDD or domain driven design. The idea is to bring the code to the business to look the same. So, of course, a lot of people is still doing mistake around DDD. They still believe that is a framework. However, it's not true. It's not technology framework. It's more a communication way to bring domain to the soft development. There are tactical and strategic perspectives inside DDD. The strategic one looks more to the business language, ambiguous language, bounded context, and context map. It explains the reason that we're doing that. And the tactical has the implementation, class, modules, and the partner themselves, where we usually go through entity, service, repository, and things like this. Okay? Just to wrap up, basically the definitions around DDD partners on the tactical perspective, where I do have my entity, I have my aggregator that aggregates my entity, value object, service, and repository. Don't worry, I will share for you those links. It is on my Git repo with the whole solution. I usually do these two books around DDD. The first one here is the Domain Driven Design Quickly by InfoQ, where it has a brief overview around DDD. My favorite one is Learning Domain Driven Design, Align Software Architecture and Business Strategy. So it is a good one, besides, of course, the classic, the blue one. There are several ways to bring this domain to our code. My favorite one so far is exploring the domain storytelling. It's a nice way because you convert your domain with history, with story. And the humankind, the humanity has doing it so great with history. Why not bring this methodology to the software? That is the whole idea of storytelling. Okay? That is the scope of the business perspective. Let's show a little bit of code. So today I will use, for example, a library sample where I will cover more details and how to convert my business like this, where I have an order, I buy books, I bring books to my library, and then I'm able to read to my code. Okay, let's create our first case using library. So I come here to my business. I will create my first class. Right now, I will create my user. So this one here, you be my reader or a person who's able to read books inside my class, my organization. So the idea of TDD is to communicate very well between my business and my code. So my reader will have my string ID, string name, and also I will put more language. Okay, so I will bring this thing. Just to wrap up you, it's basically a Java simple project using exploring Maven. So here I do have my favorite test stack here, the Jupyter, Mockito, and SSJ. So it's worth to get and understand a little bit about it. So right now I have my book, then my reader, sorry, then I will create my book. This one here is also an entity. So the reader is my first entity, book is an entity. This one here has one good sample of a multiple entity. So mostly of the time we handle with multiple entities like reader, where I can change my name, I can change my language, I can change my city, location, things like that. On the book perspective, I am not able to change anymore. I mean, I will have my edition, I will have my title, my author, and if I wish to modify my book, I need to create a new edition. And this new edition will be a new book. Okay? It has a relationship with the book, but as a new one. On this case, you can explore the multiple entities. So it's a rare situation, but it's happened. On this case, if you wish, and if you are using Java records or some Java higher than 17, you can use, of course, look into LTS perspective. You can use a record here. So you can come here, you can come here. You can have the ID, ESPN. You can have the title, the edition, and the year of release. Okay? Hey Otavio, but there is an issue here because this information must be valid when I create, like ESPN should not be new, title should not be new, edition should not be negative, and release should not be new as well. Indeed, you can validate that on the constructor. So you can do things like this. So I can come here, objects, required on new, ESPN is required. And I can validate to make sure that when my entity is built, it must have valid information. So addition should not be negative. So if it's lesser than than 1, I should put something like 3 new illegal argument exception. The addition should not be new. So right now I have my validation inside my book. Okay, so I have my whole information here. I have my both are entities, right? One is a multiple, the most common one, that is the reader, and the second one is my book. Make sure that every time that we do that you explore entities, explore the rich model. So when you create a reader, it should initialize as a valid reader. So the ID is valid, the name is valid, the language is valid, and so on. Another device for you is explore the optional to avoid null pointer exception. For example, here I have my entity that's a mandatory, I have the name that's mandatory, I have the language that is mandatory. But imagine here that for some reason I have my driver license here, because some people use driver license to as documents. So let's use the interface here. Just silly sample. So you can use getters and set getters most of the time. Flavor the setters. Avoid setter as much as possible. Use only when it makes sense. In our case, ID is mandatory. Name is mandatory. Language is mandatory. However, the driver license or any kind of documentation I might or might not have. So what can I do? I can use an explore optional here. So I can have my optional. So this way, by semantic, I know exactly that information might not be there. So I need to validate first and then use. Right now, I only cover entities. Let's go deep in value object. The value object represents a type that's mostly of the time immutable. So we can use a record there as well. And it does not have your life cycle. So it's basically when it's built, it makes sense or not. Before go to the money and descriptions, you can of course overwrite getters and setters. The record is such a powerful resource. For example, if I want to define my equals hash code just like ESPN, you can do it. There is no rush on it. You can overwrite this thing. Okay, so I usually prefer to start with my constructor here. So I put here. So remember, you can explore the power of records. So I will create my money as record. And money is a type that has mostly a currency that Java supports, and a value. You can also do a validation around records as well. So make sure that the currency is there, the value on big decimal is there as well. And you can do several operations. So right now I want overwrite equals and hash code because both values make sense for me. So my And my value object is unique because it has currency and big decimal with the same information. My money has several operations. For example, if I want to add money, so I have money, I will add. What can I do? First, I need to check if my money is not new, right? Oops, money is required here. And then I can check if the currency is the same from money currency. So if both are equal, I can do the operation. Otherwise, I need to throw an exception here. And you can create your own exception, like, okay, in this case, I will save our time because I just have a few minutes. But on this case, what I can do is throw an exception. So you cannot sum money from different currencies, and try to explore and put details around currency, on the exception to make the exception as clear as possible. So currency. So you cannot sum from different currencies. So the currency from the class and then the currency from the parameter. Right now, I know that I got an exception. Explore the exception creation. And based on that, I will create my operation, big decimal result. You can centralize the operation here. So I have my value, I have my add, I have my money value here, and I have my math context where I can do and centralize my operation here. So now you return new money, the currency, and the result. This way, I will put several informations and centralize this operation in a single class. Hey Otavio, but if I do it directly in the book, it's not a good solution because you need to memorize those validation. Imagine that right now that book has one field currency and another field value. So the book needs to handle the validation of each field. The book needs to validate that every operation needs to check the currency and things like that. And one thing that I learned is everything that I need to memorize, I will forget. That's why we need to build efficient APIs and silver bullet API as well. So avoid mistake exploring value object inside your organization. Explore the entire TDD. I have my money here, I have my book, I have my reader, and let's create also an aggregate hood, because right now I need to have my order, and basically my order is a list of products. So I have my order here, and my order is based on the reader because I need to have a reader or a user, and also a list of products here. So why do I have a product? Why not put directly inside my book? Basically is when I bought a book, the book belongs to me and it won't change the price anymore. So it's mine with the whole content. Basically what I'm gonna do is create a product, I said I will create a product, so a class product that will be an interface if I wish. And basically, this product is a product because it has a price. Of course, don't try to see the future. Um, we usually do that in the worst way. Try to design a code the most evolutionary as possible. So on this case, if my whole product belongs to a book, you can just define that my book is a product and it has a book here. So class, I have my book, and this book has a price. Oops, money, that is a price. But when I got more different types of products, I will convert this class as interface, and then I will put several implementations like a book product, a juice product, or a food product, and so on. Right now, once I only have product, it's fine to keep as well. I will define here as a final, and because it's multiple, so this product belongs only to this product, to this product here, and I need to validate that as well. Exploring the power of the effective Java, my advice to you is also explore a static method constructor. So what you can do here is public static product of book, money, price. You can put the validation here, so check if it's new, check if the price is negative, and so on. Do the validation and then create a product. So I will define my money here. Oh, sorry. Price. Let's override to price here. So do the whole validation and then create my product. So book and price. If the object become more complex, you can explore, of course, another partners like a builder or design a Fluent API to create these objects. The idea is only create an entity value object or things like that when the information is valid. Like, okay, if I want to create a mail, you can explore the power of records and value objects to make sure that, okay, when I have my email, it does a valid email. So you can come here, you can define a constructor, and so on. And based on that, you can validate my email. Of course, the first step is to make sure it's not new, so email value is required, and then put a email validation here. So every time that we do with email, use value object to express that, okay, I will create this email, and when I create this email, it is a valid email. And that is it for the reason, the business perspective. So we went into the entity where we had both, so multiple entity with the reader. Then I put a sample of driver license only to explore the power of optional. A multiple entity that's hardly ever happened, but if happened, you can explore the power of records to this kind of thing. Advice: explore the DDD as much as possible, explore the rich model as much as possible. And don't forget that every time that you instantiate any class of your business, it has the valid information in it. So if my email should be valid, so create a record, a value object as email to make sure that first it's not new, and second it has a valid information. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Right now, we talked a lot around the business because, especially, it is the core and the reason that we're doing code. So, we need to have this on mind. Then, let's move on to the next one. The second important topic when talk about uh, persistence, that is isolation. The main idea of isolation is to keeping the business safe from technology. Wait, Otavio, what does that you mean about that? We are using technology the whole time. Yes, but we need to make sure that the technology is not the end, but the way to go to achieve our business. That's why we have abstractions, that's why we have layers. So we can see several samples. I guess the most common one is the hexagonal model architecture or port and adapters that becomes a lot of famous, especially because the clean architecture book. And when we talk about abstraction, we need to use a reference because the main goal of isolation is also to fight against complexity, to fight against risk inside our soft design. And I took this highlight from the Just Enough Soft Architecture, a risk-driven approach. Is an amazing book that I recommend you to read. And the book has those two quotes: to be successful at combating the scale and complexity of software in the next decade, developers will need to improve weapons. And basically, it mentions three categories: partitioning, knowledge, and of course, abstraction. And the abstraction here can effectively combat the complexity and scale because it shrinks the problems and smaller problems. It takes easier to solve the issue. When talk about soft architecture, for sure we're gonna cover layers, and of course much more layers. We can start thinking around the big butt of mud or a structure called monolith, then move on to modular monolith, layer architectures, and explore several layers that we're gonna face inside our organization. Okay, right now let's go to the code. So I come here. That is my isolation package that already has a database, kind of like. It's basically a map where it has another map as entry. The idea is to simulate a database serialization process that we usually face against JDBC and another NoSQL database. To make it easier, I will create an entity with records and a user with only two fields. So it should be a record instead of a num, sorry. So I'll come here, the ID, and then the name. I will create first my application. So I'm avoiding to use several frameworks here because the goal is not to leave the main focus, that is the code design. So let's start with my user that might come from a JSON file that serializes JAX, a microservice application, Java. So I will have my new user where the ID is my Otavio Java, where you can follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and also on YouTube. I need to do a conversation between my user, my domain, and my database. So on this case, as I said, I use a map. So a map here. So my entry, where I do have my entry here. I will put the ID, so Otavio Java, the ID, and then I will do the same with the name. Right now I need to inject my database, so I come here, and right now I do have my database, and I will insert where I need to come here, Otavio ID, and then I need to use the entry. And to retrieve, I need to do almost the same. So I need to come here, Otavio Java, return my entry here. I need to check if my retrieve is not empty, right? And if it is not empty, I can serialize my user. So I come here, new user ID, and then I come here, name, and that is it. Right now, what did I do? So I took my user, so you can imagine a serialization from a microservice, a REST application. I put that on my database and then retrieve again to do any kind of operation. Of course, on this code design here, everything is in a single place. It is unstructured monolith. That is not good, right? Because it's hard to test a small piece of my code. I don't have any kind of isolation here. I'm breaking the single point of responsibility inside my class. So a good tip for you is usually when it's hard to do unit tests, you might be breaking any kind of single of responsibility. So what can I do to make my code easier? I can create abstractions to make more readable, to test this small piece. For example, here, I can see that I can create a mapper class that will be on charge to serialize to and from user to my database structure. So I will come here, I will create my mapper. That basically will have two methods. One to entry, where I will receive a user, another one the opposite. So the user to entity, where I will receive string object entry. To make my life easier, I will basically copy paste here. So right now Oops, now you're here. It's you here. So I come here, and then I will not new but return, and then I will take here and do almost same thing. So entry, so I will return optional of user or optional empty. What can I do right now? I can use a mapper here to reduce my complexity. Right now, my mapper can do it for me. So I can come here, show entry, return Otavio Java, and then return as entry, and then do exact same thing here. So I can convert this information here using my mapper. And that is it. So right now, I decreased the complexity inside my application, my code design, because I split in another layer. Hey, Otavio, can make it even easier? Yes, you can abstract the whole database operation. That's why we do have the data access object, the DAO, right? So I can come here, create a new class, user data access object. Right now, what I can do have here, I can have here my mapper, oops, and also my database. Why not? And I have my insert user, and I also have my optional of user find by ID string ID. So I need to do the validation. As I mentioned, I will skip because of the time, but what I can do here is object, my entry, and then mapper to user, and then do the database. And I can do the something here, right? So I can do a mapper string object retrieve database, retrieve an ID, and then convert if it does make sense. So right now, I can abstract that, can abstract both using DAO. Right now, I just need to do the database operation in a single place. And that is it. However, as a user, as you can see, I still need to have the information around my database application. right? Because I'm doing the insert. Can I have one another layer that keep me closer to the business if thou care much about the database details? Of course, you can abstract that with repository. So what you can do, you can create my user repository, where you can inject the DAO here, user DAO, and then do the validation. So I mean, this one right now can check if the information is there. If it's not there, it will insert or update to replace the information that is there. So with my user repository, repository, as user, I have less contact. I'm more far from the technology perspective. Okay? But as anything, remember that we straight off as any kind of discussion like that, because I put several layers. So I did a structure, monolith, where I put everything in a single place. Then I did a mapper, then a DAO, then a repository. Even when you do that with a framework, the point is everybody's doing that for you. So you put more layers, you're going far. So it might impact on performance and things like that. So as any kind of code perspective, makes sense to put layers to isolate the business, the main goal, but sometimes pay attention because it might have some impact inside your application. The last one and third that we cover today is performance. Just to remember, business, the main goal, isolation, to make sure that your business is safe from technology, and the last one, the performance. So they impact when we put several layers inside our application, especially because when we do or when we use any kind of ORM, object relational, we do have impedance between my paradigm on the programming language and my database, especially because Java has polymorphisms, type conversions, and a lot of designs that make sense to Java. However, it doesn't make sense to my database itself. Based on that, I need to do the conversion to and from my database, and it takes a long time. There are research that say that 9% of the operation with database is on conversion. And sometimes we forget the database and we lost performance because of that. Some people still believe that the main goal of Hibernate is to don't care about relational database. Indeed, it's not true. I took that from Gabe King presentation to celebrate 20 years of Hibernate. He is the creator of Hibernate, and he said an amazing thing. Hibernate and JPA were designed to work well in combination with handwritten SQL. So it is not crime to write a better modeling with relational database. Indeed, my advice for you is avoid as much as possible the automatic creation of relational database inside your application. Explore the normalization, explore modeling, and you can go even more because right now we have a bunch of NoSQL database types as well. So we have key value, wide column, document, graph, time series, and even more. So we have around over 200 database and the SQL, the class one, and where we can see the hybrid solution where we mix SQL and NoSQL in a single solution. But pay attention because we're still facing the cap theorem or your extension that is a parcel. As recommendation to understand better, there is this amazing book, The NoSQL Distilled, a brief guide to the emerging world of the polyglot persistence. And pay attention on the challenge is huge on the database size because we have a huge leak of knowledge. We don't have a lot of maturity models. Indeed, we have, but not enough. If you compare to application, we have a few design partners. The refactoring costs more on the database side because the refactoring in the application is just IT, and the factoring in the database also means migration. And migration means a strategy to don't uh, duplicate information, sometimes to avoid inconsistency inside applications. Yes, there is the CDC, a sample, but pay attention. The performance to explore the advantage of database is really, really important. Um, a sample of performance. What we can do is the agenda. So I came here, I will create my agenda. This agenda, you be basically information about my contacts that I do have. So for example, this one here, we have an IT, my contact name, so the name. And right now I have my contact. So my contact will have a basically an ID, right? Contact, basically an ID. If you wish, a type. I mean, if the contact is by email, social media such as Twitter, Instagram, or anything like this, and finally the value or the information itself. The next question will be, okay, how can I do the relationship with agenda? Each one's the best solution. And to reply that, of course, we need to analyze each database I'm gonna use when it makes sense. For example, if I will use relational database, what can I do is use the contact here. And then do one-on-one relationship here. So imagine that I'm using JPA. I need to do the one-to-many here. However, if I do have another solution such as MongoDB, Cassandra, I can use directly a map here where my map, you have the string, and finally the contact type. Or I can do have more information. Basically, I can modeling based on the database style that I'm gonna face it. So it may vary based on the database engine. My advice again, explore the power of the database. To conclude, the idea is to make the code simple as possible. The main goal is the simplicity inside your code. So, as usual, we start with a lot of code, writing super simple code, and then we learn design pattern. And okay, let's try to put in everywhere. Finally, we got or we realized that okay, I need to use that when it makes sense, not the whole time. And finally, we return to do super simple code as possible because the main goal of explore design patterns is to make the code simpler, more efficient. And that is the whole idea of today. So the three steps: business, the reason isolation, where you can use layers, and performance, take advantage of your database. That's all for today. If you want to know more and get more tips around become an ultimate engineer, follow me on Twitter at Otavio Java. Bye.